They did it to us again.
Who? Because
The
there's
NFL.
a lot of them.
They're like, oh, all this Lions hype, huh? Well, all right, we'll
Yeah.
squash that
Oh,
first thing.
yeah, you're the villains, huh? Let's see. Yeah, put the ego in check right
You
away.
get the Super Bowl champs on banner night. Have fun.
Good luck with it. It's I if they lose, no one's going to be surprised, right? I mean, like, yeah, I expected that. It's Patrick Mahomes at
Yeah,
home.
yeah,
They got no chance. But if they pull it out,
right.
the cornbread will never be tastier
You're right.
than that Friday morning when everyone in Metro Detroit is going to just be like, the Super Bowl is a
Yeah,
put your life savings on a division championship.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's it's
Just,
funny.
just don't get shown up. That's that's all.
Right.
You
Be
know.
competitive for three and a half quarters. They pull away at the end is what it is.
Yep, yep.
I was talking with the wife earlier. The schedule comes out and everyone's doing their predictions. Oh, 11-6, 12-5. They're gonna go 6-11. I can feel it.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
There's
yeah,
too
yeah,
many
yeah,
games in there.
yeah.
I'm like, that's an easy win,
Yeah.
and I know better.
One of my Twitter follows was going through, and I little did I know until I responded to his tweet that he was doing it with a lot of teams. Like he would just like quote tweet the the whatever team with their schedule,
Yeah.
and he'd say 4-10-3, and he did it for a bunch of them. And like I said, the Lions one was the first one I saw, so I didn't know this was a bit he was doing. So and I responded, and I go, I want to tell you you're wrong,
But
but as someone uh, who's been a fan of this team for over 30 years, not out of the realm of possibility.
and you might have overshot there on the win column too. It could very easily go south for us. So, since we are a wrestling show,
Yes,
I guess we should ask. I should ask. Did you see Rollins doing the Bears release?
I saw he was part of it. I haven't actually seen his bit, but no, but yeah, I did see he was part of it.
On the off chance that Mr. Rollins stumbles upon this abomination of a podcast, let me send a message to you, sir. You are not from Chicago. You're from Iowa. That doesn't count. Don't talk to us about hot dogs, you hack. You're not a Chicago kid. You don't get to claim the relish and that crappy pepper they put on their hot dogs. Leave our names out of your mouth, sir. That's all I have to say.
All right, sounds good. Fair enough.
Oh, and please don't hurt me if you ever see me because you could probably
Yeah,
dismantle
yeah,
me.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, on that note, yes, it's Chris and Matt's Wrestling Pod 2.0 here on musicandmoonsalts.com. And we're going to talk large portion. We're going to talk about Dynamite. And Mr. Matt here was there live in person for his shoot job. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Talk about a couple. Yeah. Not going to go over the whole show because we'd be here all day because there was a lot in that episode. A really great episode of Dynamite.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna touch a couple of the finer points and kind of give the in arena perspective because it's the first chance we've had to do that since we restarted the podcast back up. So, but you kind of had a wrestling week, didn't you?
Yeah, it's I've been trying to it's funny, Will Washington, formerly of Fightful, is now with AEW,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a tweet on Wednesday. He landed in Detroit and he was talking about gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, and like for whatever reason it struck a nerve with me, made me realize like I've got to go to wrestling shows twice in the last week for my job.
Yeah.
And experience it. It kind of made me, going into the event, feel a little more appreciation for the opportunity. So yeah, last week I got to go to Lucha Detroit at the Garden Theater on Woodward Avenue in downtown, or not too far from downtown Detroit. And man, I was blown away by this independent wrestling show. It had about 200-300 people by my estimate, just kind of counting chairs and then where people were sitting in the venue. Fantastic wrestling. The crowd was into it. You and I have been to independent shows where the crowds are not interested.
Yeah.
There's no reaction to the wrestlers. That was not the case. They were there for everything. It was a really, really good time. As someone who was there working and not cheering, I was really happy to see so many people having a good time. And then, Wednesday night I got to go to Dynamite and see it on a much grander stage. And man, what an atmosphere! What a crowd! I haven't seen the replay, or I haven't watched the episode, so I don't know how it came off on TV. But I've been to enough live television tapings to know, like, that crowd was on another level from anything I've seen before for like a Monday Night Raw. The only one that compared is when we were there when Shane made his return.
Okay. Oh, well, I was going to ask you how it compared to Blood and Guts last year.
I felt the crowd was more into this.
Okay.
From the opening bell, it felt like, I mean, you saw it in the Claudio Ray Fenix match. I mean, we were. I shouldn't say we, because I actually wasn't cheering.
Right.
I was in the section with a couple other media people. It was really awkward. There's this section of like 6 of us not making a sound all night. But I felt like when I say we, Detroit was there for it from the beginning, and it kept up throughout the night. I felt like Blood and Guts last year. It started off hot, and then it was just kind of like, all right, we know what we're really here for.
Yeah.
It's still a great crowd, but man, Wednesday night was an electric atmosphere inside of the LCA.
Yeah. It definitely sounded like it was. Crowd sound good. It's always one of those things whenever any kind of televised wrestling rolls through town, you even if you're there, you definitely want to make some noise. But if you're not there, you're just hoping that your fellow Detroiters and Michiganders, bring the proper noise so that it shows these, and that's why, like I said, as out on WWE, is I hope SummerSlam's like a big success too, and that crowd is a good one too, because I think some respect needs to be put on Detroit's name as far as a wrestling town. I think it's been forgotten how good of a town this is, and how much iconic moments have happened in Detroit, and the surrounding areas too. Shout out Auburn Hills, but I felt like they're in like the late 2000s into the mid 2010s. I felt like we were getting quite a bit of shows from WWE and stuff like that, and then it just kind of, especially once WWE switched to all the big fours being like these massive weekends where they camp out in a city for a whole weekend. Like, I felt like we should have got one of those, and we never did, and that always kind of pissed me off, because I felt like we deserved it. And now they don't necessarily do that anymore, but we are getting SummerSlam, and a big stadium SummerSlam. So,
yeah. So before the show, I actually give you a little behind the scenes of what I've got going on for work. I'm working on a story about fans calling for Detroit to get more of these big events, because you said it, we're a historically great wrestling town, and the fans that I talked to, a couple of them made some really good points about, like, they kind of understood in the past, like you were saying, why the big shows weren't coming to the area, because if you'd spent time in Detroit, it's not as bad as people like to make it out to be, but there are issues with the city. And a couple of the big issues were like public transportation, hotels near the arena, that sort of thing. Over the last 6 or 7 years, downtown Detroit, we've seen new hotels open up. The Q line is there. There's a lot more ride share and ways to get people around town that aren't, that people mover, that as much as I love it, isn't really, it's an eyesore. Let's be honest.
Right.
But the city has done a really, certain parts of the city have done a really good job of developing that, so that a major company can come in and say, yeah, we can put a 4-day event on here, and our talent doesn't have to take hotels to go out to Novi for a hotel or
Right.
Livonia or something like that. They can stay in the city. So I'm hopeful that this is just that SummerSlam and kind of this summer as a whole is the starting point of Detroit becoming another place where like, oh, hey, AEW is taking Full Gear somewhere else. We're going to bring it to Detroit. Detroit said, WWE can say, Money in the Bank was great in London a couple years ago, but we also had a great show in Detroit in 2023. Maybe we do Money in the Bank 2025 here, something like that.
Yeah, for sure. The other part of it too is like, pre 2017, I think. Yeah, 2017 is when LCA opened. Like before then, I kind of got it too because like, I love the Joe. I miss the Joe, but
it was a dump.
It was a dump.
I mean,
we're the only ones.
We're
the only ones that can call it a dump.
Oh yeah! Don't you dare disrespect Joe Louis Arena. However, if you're local, there was a distinct smell.
Yes.
That the concourse had.
Oh yeah.
No matter how much popcorn they popped.
Yes.
Still smelled like a men's room.
Yes. Very much. But yeah, so I kind of got it from that standpoint. But then once LCA got built, and I thought, okay, we got Hell in a Cell right off the bat, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And then,
nothing.
But anyways,
I will say real quick, just to add on that, as they were tearing down the Dynamite set and building up the Rampage set, obviously this wasn't on TV.
Right.
Tony Khan came out, addressed the crowd. He came out like 3 times. He had nothing but great things to say about Detroit. And shout out to the fans that were, if you're looking at the stage on the right side, not on the floor, but in the lower bowl, they're chanting pay-per-view, pay-per-view, pay-per-view. And you could see it kind of caught Tony off guard, and he goes, I acknowledge that. I hear you. He's like, I can't make promises, but I'm taking it under consideration. You guys have been amazing both times we've been. So he kind of teased us a little bit too, like, hey, I hear it. But I don't know if that happens every major town.
He said that last year. Like, I distinctly remember last year because it was like the week after Forbidden Door. And like one of the first, I can't remember because, he came out like 2 or 3 times last year too. And, might have even been 3 or 4, but one of the first couple times he came out, and amongst all the F-bombs he was dropping, which was hilarious, he said he made some allusion about bringing, pay-per-view, and he specifically mentioned Forbidden Door, like, and I'm thinking, all right, Forbidden Door 2 in Detroit, let's go, and then they're like, Toronto, and I'm like, well, that's close, I guess, but not really.
And it makes sense too. They're new territory.
Yeah,
I wonder with Double or Nothing sales being as slow as it appears they've been, if maybe they're going to decide it's time to pull that and All Out away from just being in the same spot every year. Who knows? It's just good to know that Detroit represented once again, and they were clearly happy with the crowd at least. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the show. Let's talk about why the crowd was so happy. We got started off with I hesitate to use the word because it's overused, but it was an absolute banger. Claudio and Ray Fenix, it was just great stuff.
I don't know that there's a better big man in wrestling who works with smaller guys as well as Claudio.
Yeah,
I've loved that guy for years, but when he's in the ring with someone who's 4 or 5 inches smaller than him, or maybe smaller than that in Ray's case.
Mm-hmm.
He knows, he works so well with those guys. And I don't know what it is. His matches to me are just even better when he's working with a smaller guy. And you could see it from the opening 2 minutes of that match. You could feel that him and Ray were going to have just an incredible athletic, back and forth battle, and the crowd was, I think it was 4 or 5 minutes into the match, the first "This is awesome" chant.
Yeah. Because it was really great. And this was a double Jeopardy match, and apparently this was an idea that Tony came up with like in the middle of the night. Because he was like, I guess he was just like trying to come up with like a reason other than just having a match to have this match. And he's like, oh, double jeopardy. The winner gets a shot at the other's title.
Right. Well, and that was one of the points I was going to make about the show overall. I mean, overall, this episode of Dynamite was just proof that almost whenever they want, they can put on a television card that no other company in the world can match.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for these two to have a match. He came up with an excuse, and then they just went out and put on a 4.5-star masterpiece of, you don't need a great storyline all the time to have a great match. And
right.
And I would say Cassidy and Garcia, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, fit that bill too. There's no real build to that match, but it landed.
Yeah. Yeah, we can mention that briefly. Wasn't one I was specifically going to hit, but we can touch on that briefly. Another successful defense for Orange Cassidy against young Mr. Garcia. I kind of thought this was going to open the show just because I remember, again, going back to last year, I remember the first thing we heard was Jane. So yeah, that's almost the default opening to Dynamite. It seems like most weeks is like.
Yeah, wasn't it last week or 2 weeks ago? He kicked off the show.
He kicks it off a lot. Like it's always Excalibur giving you the big sell job during the beginning of the show, and then the opening keyboards to Jane.
Yeah.
And
it makes sense. I saw at least 15 people dressed as Orange Cassidy at the show. I saw I don't know, their husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. I mean, decked out, kids again. That dude is over.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And his compatriots in the Best Friends, along with Bandito, they had the first open house. That's what it's called. I couldn't come up with it. I kept saying house rules, which is the house shows that they're doing.
Yeah.
Open house. I don't know. It felt like they. Again, I'm going to wait for the concept to go through a couple of times. Because on paper I like it. It just felt like they're like, oh yeah, we got to do that tonight. Okay, here's the stipulation. So, because I remember all the rules now. It's 20-second countouts, no rope breaks, DQs are heavily enforced, and then the last one.
Any three people can make a trio.
Right, and then the last rule is that whoever's ever challenging, they get to choose the stipulation for the match. And then right before, Best Friends and Bandito, answered the call, and like right before they do a backstage interview with Renee and Orange Cassidy's there, and they inform the trio that you need to pick a stipulation for this match. Trent and Chuck are like, what are you talking about? No one told us about this. And because Julia just had her match against Anna Jay, they're like, no witches allowed at ringside.
Yeah,
which is funny, but kind of lame for the first one of these.
The first match. What did you think of the presentation though, of leaving the lights down the whole time and just having the spotlight on the ring?
I liked it.
So did I.
Because it wasn't like, because there was still enough light. Like they didn't go full like Bray Wyatt with it, where it's like no light. Like there was still ample lighting in the arena, at least on TV. It looked like that you could definitely see. You could still see everything pretty well. So I like it. I hope
it looks spooky. It looks spooky without being corny.
Yes.
And I like the idea that this match is going to be different every time because of the dealer's choice option and then giving it a different presentation. I love it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do anything crazy after that. It just signifies, this must be the trios match. It kind of broke up the show a little bit too. It didn't feel as like everything looked the same, which can I don't know, my mind will wander if it all looks the same for too long. So I really like the presentation, and I think it's just another way to get a little more steam on House of Black, who it feels like they are gearing up for a pretty decent run with these titles.
I hope so. Like they've kind of been kind of not been on TV a whole lot since they won them. Other than those first couple weeks when they did the triple threat trios match in Canada and stuff like that. Unless they've been on Rampage, because I don't watch Rampage. Ain't nobody got time for that. Clearly. So I'm hoping, like, the gimmick, the lore stuff, like, I can take or leave, but there's no denying the three of those dudes in the ring are just excellent at professional wrestling. And so, I want to see them do more of it on my television screen.
Yes. And look, in the arena, they were over. I mean, best friends got a little pop, but there is definitely a large chunk of the Detroit fan base was there. Brody got a huge pop from when he got his heat in the match. People were real amped to cheer for Brody there.
Yeah, good deal. The big moments were just limited to in the ring. We saw a couple faces we haven't. That's not the right picture. Seen a couple of faces we haven't seen in quite a while on TV. Miro and Thunder Rosa. They both showed up backstage and walked into Tony Khan's office, and then he promptly decided to do an on-camera like 2 minutes later.
Right. Like, I don't got time for them. He's playing it out in real life. So, man, when they panned up and showed Miro, the sound,
good.
Like, I even gasped. I was like, whoa, like, oh, and the buzz, because it went to commercial right after that, I felt like, because they showed that and there wasn't something right away. The people around, the fans that were kind of around us were like, oh my God, he's back. Is he coming out tonight? Is he coming out? And obviously he didn't. But just his face set people off. Like, I hope when he finally gets back on every week, I hope they run with him this time, because it really feels like the fan base wants as much of Miro as they'll give them.
Definitely. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I still think his TNT title run was one of the best, and
probably the best.
Probably, yeah. I wouldn't argue anyone who said it was the best. And yeah, I'm ready to see Miro on my TV again. It's been way too long. So yeah, we had those, and then Tony made the announcement of the announcement next week, which I think we all assume is going to be Collision.
The second coming.
Yeah, that too. And so so I think this is all sowing seeds for that. People complaining, oh, I can't get on TV, and in kayfabe and in real life, and then they're like, oh, here's a whole another 2-hour show.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So yeah, and it confused a lot of people too. He's making an announcement on TNT, I'm guessing during one of the playoff games or something, and then Dynamite starts on TBS right after.
Oh, is that? I didn't catch that from in the arena. All we caught was him saying next week we're going to have a major announcement that's going to, I think he said, shake the foundation of all elite wrestling or something like that. But so, I didn't catch that it's going to be.
Yeah. Because a lot of people, like Bix, thought he had misspoke, and it's like, no, he because all the socials tweeted it out too. Like, the announcement's being made on TNT because that's where Collision is going to air, is TNT.
Sure.
So, and then it sounds like it's going to be right before Dynamite, and then Dynamite starts on TBS at 8:00 next week. So,
sure,
whatever.
Well, they have the upfronts earlier in the day. I'm sure by the time the show goes on the air Wednesday night, the news is going to be out there. So.
I'm sure. Is there anything else we before we get to the main event?
Yeah, real quick. I texted you from the arena. Christian, look, man, he may be 46, or he's a little up there in age.
Yeah.
But him just walking out, I've never been in an arena where a heel has that kind of heat just for talking, or at least that I could remember. Because, man, they were booing him out of the building. And he did a couple of the Detroit sucks things, but
Right.
when he started to get into his work about trying to sell the program with Wardlow, the fans were just eating him alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Seeing his I seem to remember a cutting edge segment with his former tag team partner at a Survivor Series that was got some good crowd reaction too. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, look, it's Edge and Christian, like they're great.
I don't know if I know because I texted you. I don't know if it came through on the broadcast, but when he mentioned being a multi-time champion, the arena was chanting Edge is better at it.
Nice.
So.
Nice. That's good. That's good stuff.
Anything else? Max Caster's rap at the start of Rampage is really good. Not that that's surprising, but he did a great job with that, and the match was pretty solid. Nothing else that stands out from being in the crowd that I think we need to address.
Okay. Well, let's get to the main event. It was funny. So when we were texting, right when Christian came out, that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to turn this off, try and get my kid to bed, and then I'll finish up after he goes to sleep. That took a lot longer than expected, but eventually I got back and I was finishing the show, and by that time my wife is home and she's sitting there and she's watching it with me a little, and we're, talking and stuff like that about how was your day, blah, blah, blah. Well, then they start to get the cage match, Moxley comes out and stuff like that. She goes, they're doing a cage match. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. She's like, especially with Jon Moxley, I know what's coming. I'm going to bed.
What's funny about that is I saw a graphic. There have been 6 cage matches in AEW history at this point, and 2 blood and guts matches. And I have been to one of the blood and guts matches, and now 2 of the steel cage ones.
Oh yeah.
Like I've got the I don't know if you'd call it luck or the misfortune of seeing their cage matches at all 3 of the shows I've been to from the company.
Yeah. Look, it's been said a lot of other places. I think that the 2 of these guys have said it themselves in some form or fashion in the build up. But like, if you really think about it, Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley is like it's their Magic Bird. It's their Rock Austin. Like, that's the rivalry for AEW. And because every time they get in the ring, they just go nuts. And this was no different. Like this, I mean, going through the cage spot was just like, oh my God.
I called that in the crowd.
Did you?
I called it in the crowd because if you notice, I think only one time in the entire match did one of them throw the other one into the cage.
Okay.
And when Moxley rolled over, he was a little bit off center and he crawled to the center. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to V-trigger him through the cage. And sure enough, and I mean, that sound, whoa!
Yeah.
So good. So good. But I mean, everything before that, the brutality of that match.
Oh yeah.
The steel cage or the steel chair with the barbed wire. It hurts, and then they zoom in and you can see the puncture wounds, and you're just like, there's no way. Like,
nope.
He's not selling. That dude is in pain. And broken glass, like, man, you didn't even really need to do it, but man, that level of violence. One of the people I talked to before the show was like, I said, "What are you hoping to see tonight?" And he goes, "I just want to see somebody get their ass kicked." Well, if he was the representative of fans in Little Caesars Arena, he got what he wanted because that was a fight.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of calling things, I believe I called here on this very podcast that this is where Don Callis was going to turn on Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
So
when he hit the one-winged angel, I'm like, oh, this is it, because there's no reason for Don to be in the cage at that point.
Right. Yeah. yeah, so he hits the one-winged angel, and Don hits him in the head with a screwdriver, and Mox picks up the win.
Fans around me, it wasn't the same level. I don't want to give it that, but the look of shock and the sound of silence was reminiscent of Brock at WrestleMania 30. Like people really didn't see it coming around me.
Your camera just shut off.
Yeah, someone was trying to call me. I had to turn it off.
Oh, gotcha.
My apologies.
Gotcha. No, it's all good. It's okay.
You know, these Apple products are all linked together, so someone calls my phone and it shows up on my iPad.
Yep.
And these people know I got business to attend to. But,
yeah.
The fans around me were like, oh my God. And, you know, you called it. I feel like a lot of people felt it was coming, but when they actually pulled it off, I'd say a good 70% of the arena didn't see it coming.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, again, you got to be really kind of in the weeds on this stuff. Shout out to Jeremy Lambert and Joel Pearl for their show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. To really kind of have that in your head, I think, like if you're just, I don't even say call it the casual fan, because it's not even that. I just think you got to be thinking about, you got to be a psycho about this stuff to really have kind of seen that coming at that moment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and now so there wasn't so Brian was on commentary during the match, and I know there wasn't anything. I wasn't sure if they're gonna go with Don just turning on Kenny, or Don joining up with the BCC, and it sounds like they're just going with Don turning on Kenny, which is, I don't know how I feel about that right now. Because I feel like that's going to lead to a Kenny Takeshita feud. But we still got to wrap up this elite BCC business. And I get like setting something up before the first thing finishes, like that's all well and good. But I'm interested to see how they juggle this going forward.
Yeah, I don't think Don's going anywhere near the BCC. You mentioned Takeshita. I think it's going to be Ospreay. I think they're going to do some sort of thing where he works with Ospreay to get the match with Kenny at either All In or Forbidden Door. Because, you know, Don can say, I found the next Kenny Omega, or the even better version of Kenny Omega, or however he wants to sell it. Because that's clearly going to happen again, right?
Sure.
I
just went with Takeshita because he, you know, Don's been really kind of giving Takeshita some attention for months now.
Yeah, I just feel like Takeshita, I wouldn't. Why would you turn him heel at this point?
Fair.
He's dude. People love him, and it's really hard to get fans behind any wrestler. So until they're not showing interest, I'd leave him where he is for the time being.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't get where the Hangman return didn't happen, which I was actually like really happy about that I didn't miss that. So
yeah, well,
I was
he can stay away.
Because I thought, especially when everything kind of broke down before the match even started, with, you know, the Bucks and Claudio and Wheeler coming out and stuff like that, I thought for sure it was all going to come back around and end in a big brawl, and then
a Donnybrook in the cage.
Yeah, exactly. But that wasn't to be. So we got to wait for that for a little while longer. Hopefully not too much longer, because we're kind of clock is ticking here on Double or Nothing, you know, until Double or Nothing. But yeah. So
I'm not entirely sure at this point that it's going to be a page yet either. That I don't know. People may not have seen the interview Kenny did after the show, where he's like, "If I can't trust family, who can I trust?" And I know it's all kind of leading towards Hangman, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Kota Ibushi is involved in it somehow too.
Maybe. Yeah.
Especially with the Forbidden Door stuff. If you did like the Golden Lovers versus Moxley and Danielson, come on.
Yeah, but I see. I don't think that's a Forbidden Door match because Forbidden Door is so tied to New Japan, and there's so many bad feelings between Kota and New Japan. So
yeah, maybe.
I think
That's a fair point too.
that'd probably be a different show, but yeah, we'll see. Especially now, again, going to the BTE lore, there's still this thing lingering with Matt, not being able to bring himself to tell Kenny about, how the ending to Full Gear 2021 went down. These last few years have just run together. Finished up with, him kind of giving Hangman the nod before beating Kenny instead of helping Kenny. So, that's been the big with Alex Reynolds kind of threatening that he was going to tell Kenny that, and he faked him out this week with telling him that Matt ate all the peanut butter cheesecake and catering instead.
Yeah, the Dark Order stuff was great. I'm just over it at this point.
Right.
They're never on TV.
I know.
They're really just BTE characters at this point. So it's hard for me to get. I'm not even watching BTE most weeks. I see the little recap that'll get posted somewhere because I feel like you have to know a little bit about what's going on the show to understand everything that they're doing on the TV. But that sort of stuff just it's.
You got to fill your friendship holes, Matt.
Yeah, all the holes all at once. Yes. All 3 holes at once, yes. Right? It was Silver, right? That said that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like something he'd say.
It might have been Uno, actually. I think Uno said, let us fill your hole, and then Silver said all 3 of us at the same time. Is there anything else from Dynamite?
No, I don't think so. Just it might be the best TV, broadcast I've ever been. The only thing that comes to mind that was close is Raw, like I mentioned earlier, where Shane returned, and outside of that moment and the finish of that show where Triple H beat the hell out of Roman at the time when everyone hated Roman. The rest of that show wasn't like a barn burner. It certainly didn't have any matches like we saw Wednesday night.
They had Brock beating Dean Ambrose up outside the arena before the show, and then Dean making the return in the ambulance. There was something with, were Y2 AJ still tagging, or were they? Or no, that was the week. Isn't that the week that Jericho burned the shirt in the garbage can? I think.
I don't remember. I remember the New Day and Ricochet. And
I remember you were in the bathroom when Ryback came out because you made some comment about hearing his theme song. In the bathroom.
Yeah. And I purposely stayed out on the concourse and looked at like merch and stuff because I'd rather smell the urine scent of Joe Louis Arena than watch Ryback in the
Fair. All right. You mind if I talk a little bit about our next Universal Champion, Bad Bunny?
You go right ahead. I apologize if there's a little background noise. My oldest just got home from school.
All right. So I did end up turning on like the last hour or so of Backlash Saturday night. Especially once I saw the rundown and saw like the 3 matches I really cared about were all at the end. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, and I did. I timed it perfectly. I turned it on right as this match was about to start. And I understand how you feel about the celebrity thing, and I get it. We are in the golden age of celebrity wrestling, though. It's crazy. That Bad Bunny match was so freaking good. Just so good. And then, all it was a little bit overbooked towards the end. I'll give it that. But I mean, it was a lot of pops for the whole, given that crowd what they, what they wanted with the Carlito and the Savio Vega, and like it was just awesome. It was just a cool, like I said, like I was texting you, I'm like, you think again, and not no shade at Jericho, but if you think an arena full of people singing Judas is cool, an entire stadium singing Bad Bunny song as he was making his way to the ring was like word for word, clear as day.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm like, holy shit, that's cool. And like I couldn't tell you a Bad Bunny song probably, but like still, like that was just freaking cool.
Look, I'm very much anti-celebrity when it comes to wrestling in big spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
This I feel was a little different because it wasn't the top spot of the night, even though it should have been. It should have been the main event.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Bad Bunny against, let's face it, a mid-card wrestler who he had a history with in his home country. Like, and it was a good match. I have no problem with that. It's when it's, oh, here's a celebrity coming in and getting a top-tier guy at the biggest show of the year, when that top-tier guy should be on a different level, that it gets it, that it eats at me a little bit. But look, man, that atmosphere on Saturday night was one of the coolest. I mean, that's Punk in Chicago level stuff. It was electric.
Mm-hmm.
It was so awesome to see that just as a wrestling fan. Everyone in that arena was happy, and it just kept getting – look, it wasn't going to be a 5-star classic in the ring. And I think Meltzer gave it like 4.25 or something like that. What the star rating doesn't matter, because from the time Bad Bunny, well, actually from the time Damian Priest walked out until the end of the match, those people were lit.
Mm-hmm.
They were there for it, and the match just kept getting better and better and better. Dom comes out and gets the booze rain down on him, and then, you know, who called Carlito coming back,
right?
And then looking like a gazillion dollars and getting a humongous pop. Like,
well, yeah, because it's you know, I didn't think about it. Like, you know, obviously he was back at the Rumble a couple years ago, but there was no fans for that. That was the Thunderdome Rumble. So, like, this is his first time back in front of a crowd, and it's in Puerto Rico. Like, how? Yeah, that's freaking cool.
That's Holly was watching it with me, and she goes, "Oh my God, he looks better now than he did 20 years ago. Like, he looks like he's ready to be like the world champion. He looks incredible."
Yeah, if there wasn't a hiring freeze right now, I'd be like, sign him.
Even if there is a hiring freeze, somebody, if he wants to work, someone should probably be hiring that man.
But yeah, no, that was fun. And then like the 6-man tag was good, and then, you know, Brock and Cody happened. So,
I mean, I feel like that sums up everything with Neck Tattoo, and then Cody happened. So I wanted to ask you,
okay,
since we're on the topic of the Fed, as you guys like to call it, how badly have they bungled this post WrestleMania? These storylines, the stuff with Cody and Brock feels like no one is interested, because they just don't seem to know what they do. And I've seen tons of people just like, how have they dropped the ball with KO and Sammy and the Usos so badly? It feels like they're just stringing everything out. At least that's the reaction I'm seeing from a lot of fans.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, from what little, because again, I haven't, you know, since WrestleMania, I haven't been paying super close attention. Yeah, it's been weird. You know, because they made the decision not to put the title on Cody, they got to figure out ways now to keep him out of both title pictures, because obviously I think it's pretty clear who's winning the new World Heavyweight title. That's Seth Rollins' belt. I think they just go ahead and put his side plates on it. That's his belt. And so, you know, you're not gonna have Cody anywhere near the two top titles anytime soon. So now you gotta, what do you do? Oh, well, we'll extend this Brock feud for another pay-per-view for whatever reason. Like, I don't know. So yeah, there's that. And then, yeah, it was weird with the Usos and KO and Sammy, because, you know, it seemed like they were hammering the same beat that they were hammering
Yeah,
beforehand with Sammy, like, I'm trying to save Jay, and it's like,
yeah, every clip I see from this, you could have played that 9 weeks ago, and I'd have been like, oh yeah, they're building for WrestleMania.
yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's been any advancement on any of that stuff. And I know Roman's going to be back tonight, and he had the press conference after Mania where he said, oh, you're going to have to wait. We're not making McDonald's. I'm cooking filet mignon, but my dude, I got to eat a little bit once in a while.
Yeah.
If you want me to keep coming back to the restaurant, you got to give me more than your table scraps. So
right. We're only in the 3rd inning. I think that's what they said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in MLB The Show, the 3rd inning is the bottom of the 9th if you're playing Conquest. So
exactly.
Let's get on to the next. No more mini season. There you go.
So, but yeah, that was it. I just want to talk about Bad Bunny for a second because I was really impressed with that match.
I to be honest, I completely forgotten that was just
last
days
week
ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2 weeks ago.
I know.
You're oh man, I completely forgot that amazing moment was less than a week ago.
Time. What is time?
Yeah. Well, since we're on it real quick, dude, what I thought was great too is that crowd gave everybody that they loved their flowers that night. And I know Vega took some heat for crying before the match like that, but that's a feel good moment. She gets to perform in front. And the crowd turning on Bianca, and Bianca kind of leaning into it a little bit, but not going full blown heel. And they made Io look like a star. It's just, man, it's amazing how a great crowd can turn anything into like just a spectacular show.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, I think that's it.
You don't want to talk about the $1 billion AEW deal that's coming?
We'll talk about it once it's announced. How about that?
Oh, once it's official.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once
not
Phil's
when it's just
officially
predicted.
secured the bag.
Not when it's just, someone making a prediction and everyone running with it like it's a spoiler. But, wrestling fans, some of them can't read that well.
Or at all. That's okay.
We
love all wrestling.
Exactly.
Well, that's not. I should say that. I should say that.
Yeah. Some of you.
Most of us. We love most of you.
Yes.
The idiot that just kept shouting to my right during all of Dynamite on Wednesday is not one of the ones that I love.
Anything in particular, or just random stuff?
Just anyone listening or watching, you've been to a wrestling show. There's always that one guy that thinks he's gonna be the center of attention and yells out stupid shit the whole night. And this guy, he had a few too many soda pops, and all night. Hit him with the table. It's not a tables match. Like this, he was literally chanting, "This is boring" during the steel cage match. Like, whatever, dude. Like, just go have another beer, pass out in the bathroom, leave us alone. But
yeah,
that wasn't one of the Detroiters. He came from out of town. That's probably one of those Ohio people
or Canadians.
No, Canadians are good folks.
That's true. Good point. Yeah, no, it had to have been Ohioan. You're right. What was I thinking?
One thing that I don't know, had Impact announced Slammiversary's location yet?
Not that
I know you're more
aware of.
It's going to be at Windsor.
Okay.
After the show, I was outside. They were handing out flyers. Slammiversary.
Okay, maybe they did announce it then. They might have announced it. Yeah, no, now that I think about it, yeah, I think that was announced. It just
okay. So for those of you that are in the Southeast Michigan area, another big show. Look, Slammiversary is Impact's biggest show of the year, correct?
It's either that or it's Bound for Glory. Those are the big two. So
sure. So I mean, keep your eyes out for that, guys, because another big show coming into the area. It's great news.
That typically has been the one the last few years too, where and there hasn't been as many releases this year, so that probably won't be the case this year. But that's the one the last few years has been big with debuts because if a bunch of people get released in April, usually by the time Slammiversary comes around, all the 90 days are up, and they can all. Gallows and Anderson showed up in Impact at Slammiversary the year that they got released, so.
Okay.
But
and look, I mean, with Forbidden Door right around the corner, I mean, who's to say that show doesn't have some AEW and New Japan people there too? So,
right.
Not that anything's promised, but it another big wrestling card coming to Detroit. GCW's here in a couple weeks. Like Summer of Wrestling in the D.
Give me FTR versus Ace of Bays.
I don't know if you saw, but FTR. Oh, that's one thing I have to mention too. But Dax had a tweet out. He's like, "Oh, we're in Detroit. Maybe we finally call out Shelly and Sabin."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
I was praying that was going to be the Rampage event, but
Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, whatever.
I was pretty bummed on this Jeff Jarrett.
No, you weren't. No one was bummed.
I was.
Real quick, I was on the concourse 10 minutes before the show starts, eating a hot dog, and I back up and I hit something. Oh, so sorry, excuse me. And then I look, and they've got a belt wrapped over their shoulder. And I'm like, oh, that looks. And then everyone's chasing. I'm like, oh my God, that's Cash Wheeler. Dax and Cash are walking through the concourse. They had just finished. I think they were doing a meet and greet, and they were walking to get back to the locker room. And I bumped right into them.
Can I get an interview?
Yeah, right.
I was like,
the fans chasing them, and
I didn't run into him. I just happened to look behind me and saw Darren McCarty walking at Blood and Guts last year.
That's yeah.
Speaking of Impact Wrestling,
it's the second time I've literally bumped into a celebrity. Well, I don't know, celebrity is the right word. And been like, oh, my bad. And then like, holy hell, it ran into Pete Rose in Las Vegas one time.
Oh.
And then I go, that's Pete Rose.
Yeah. Did you tombstone him?
No.
Oh.
No.
Should have tombstoned him.
I should have. I should have said, I'm here to finish the job of the mayor.
All right, let's get out of here.
That's good.
All right. Yes, we'll be back next week, and we'll leave a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel. Yes. And we'll be back next week to talk about Dynamite and whatever else news comes up. I'm sure we'll talk about probably the new show and all that.
$1 billion Brooks.
Yeah.
$1 billion Brooks.
Oh, I hope WWE starts running skits.
Billionaire Phil.
Yeah. No, Billionaire Brooks.
He's knocking on the door to get into the arena. And they're like, Lee, get out of here. I like it.
Yeah. I should workshop that. That's good. All right, guys. Until next week. See ya.